Alrighty, welcome everyone to concurrent session 3. My name is Amanda Outhouse, and I have the pleasure today to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Rodrigo Tarte. Briefly, a little bit about him. He received all of his degrees at the best university, which is Iowa State University. His PhD focused on food science and technology and meat science in 1996. His research focuses on processed meats and value-added meat and meat products with emphasis on development of application of technologies to enable product innovation and increase product value and the scientific understanding of and development of practical solutions to technical challenges in meat processing. So with that, Dr. Tarte?
All right, can you guys hear me in the back? Yeah, okay. Great, so thank you everyone for being here. Feel free to come up to the front. Kind of feel like a preacher, you know, like people way out there. I'm not going to take an offering or anything. One of the things that's not in that little short bio is, you know, I've been with the university for about 2 years. And before that, I actually, since the time that I finished graduate school until 2 years ago, I worked in the meat processing industry, okay, in different companies. The last company I worked for was Smithfield Foods, and before that I did a number of years at Oscar Mayer Foods as well. So, you know, she said, my relation to the swine industry is I'm a food guy. So I work with the products that we actually put in front of consumers. So we take our pigs, we process those, convert them into products that we put in front of consumers. My specific area is processed meats. Okay, so in this, you know, there's a lot of consumer interaction, and as you guys are probably aware, and some of this is going to be follow up of what we heard this morning. There's a lot of concern among some consumer groups, and I think it's mostly consumer groups, very influential, very loud, very good marketers of their message. About what goes into their food. So when we talk about processed meat, we're not just talking about the pork, for example, that goes in it. They care about the pork. Now they care about gestation crates and humane handling and slaughter and, you know, hormones and antibiotics and all these kinds of things. And then when we actually make that into like a hot dog, now they care about the ingredients that are in the hot dog. Where do those come from? And should we have those ingredients? You know, and so forth. So we're going to cover off on some of those controversies. So I want to first off start off by make sure that we are kind of all grounded. This is from a pork board report from Quick Facts from 2011. It's the most recent version of this type of data that I could find. You know, but it basically details that, you know, you take all of our fresh versus pork processed pork consumption. About almost 80% of all pork is consumed in the form of a processed product. Okay, that means it's not loin or it's a product that has been transformed in some way. And if you look at, if you further look at where do those come from, okay, so you know you got ham, so that 80%, ham is about 40%. Bacon and others are 23. Sausage meats. So here you got your bellies and your hams. That's where they go for the most part. They go to the processing side of the industry, and then you got some pork lunch meat as well, and then the rest are going to be industrial trimmings that go primarily into sausage products. So when we think about it now, I'm not here to debate the value equation of a pig carcass, but 80% of that meat actually finds its way into my area of influence. So a lot of our pork has been sold at the retail case, you know, and the processed meats case at Hy-Vee and all these other places across the country. So just something for us to think about. Okay, so my talk today, my agenda is going to be, we're going to talk about the basics of meat product labeling. So I just want to get you a little grounded. So I'm going to give you meat labeling 101. And then we're going to talk about a little bit about the consumer. And a lot of it's going to echo what we heard this morning, okay, because we can't ignore. So the talk is going to take a completely different shift. And then we're going to come back and say, okay, so now that we complained about it, what do we do about it? So what's the industry doing to address some of those the consumer sentiment And we're going to introduce a little bit the concept of a clean label that you may have heard about, so-called clean label, and what are the implications. And then in the talk, in the PowerPoint or the PDF files that I think you have access to on the website, I put some stuff on the appendix because we wouldn't have time to cover off on that, but there's specific, talk about labeling of different types of products. So what's natural, what's organic, what's this, what's, what are those things, and what does the law have to say about such things? All right, so what is a product label? First of all, a product label is, one of the things that a product label does is it conveys information, okay, to the consumer. Okay, usually affixed to the product. And so we think about it in those terms. Obviously, it's not the package per se, but it can be affixed to the package. So the product label is there to communicate to the consumer. That's the reason for a product label. What is the product? What's in the product? How much of the product is there? Are there any special handling requirements? Should you keep this product refrigerated? And the label is evolving, okay, as in response to what's going on around us these days. The label, again, like I said, informs consumers. They can make value decisions when you compare products. So they compare your label versus your competitor's label. And then they make a value judgment. So if they haven't tried either product, the label is probably the best thing they got. That and the visual impact of what the product looks like. Which is why we have, samplings at grocery stores to persuade people, oh, this product actually tastes really good. Labels also are there to prevent consumer deception, so they're regulated for that reason, and ensure equitable competition and prevent injury to consumers from sale of misbranded products. So labels must be truthful, and there are level of regulations that we're going to go through those a little bit. So take, for example, this product, okay? I'm not endorsing any specific kind of product in doing this, but take, for example, this product, and I'm just going to run you through what are the mandatory features of a retail medium product label. So this particular product has two sides to the label. In the front is what we call the principal display panel. And that's usually what consumer sees, and then they turn it over, and then they see other types of information on it. So you have a product name, so your product name is mandatory. So these are things that the USDA mandates be in every processed product label. And even fresh products, some of these are mandated in fresh products as well. The ingredient statement, so what are the ingredients in predominance, in order of predominance by weight? From the most abundant to the least abundant, what's in it? Okay, the address line, who made the product? Okay, so you need to specify the name and address of and place of business of your company. Not necessarily where the manufacturing location is located, usually it's the corporate location of the company. Okay, the inspection legend and the establishment number. So this is a mark of inspection. That means this product was made in a facility that is under USDA inspection. And inside that seal, there will also be a little number. Whoop, something happened. Let's see, need help? Okay, there we go. Awesome. So that establishment number is the unique identifier for that manufacturing location. So a large company will have several establishment numbers because every plant will have a different establishment number. So for consumers who are savvy enough, which is not most consumers in this regard, you can go on the USDA website, pull up the MPI directory, Medium Poultry Inspection, the directory of establishments, and then you can say, oh, this product came from, wherever. Okay? The net weight statement needs to be on the label as well, how much is in the product. A handling statement, because this is a product that needs to be kept refrigerated, so this one does say keep refrigerated, and I can't read the rest of it. Usually it's like below 40 degrees at all times or something like that. If it's a non-shelf stable product like this one, so it is required only for chilled products. And then the nutrition facts panel, okay, it's also mandated by law. So these are the things that have to be on the label. Everything else you put on it, it's up to you. And if you put any claims on your product, they have to be truthful claims. Okay. So here are some of the voluntary features that you can find in labels. You can have claims to communicate benefits of your product, or why your product is healthy, or why your product is better than your competition, or what makes your product different. Claims are regulated though, so it's not like you can just go off and make any kind of statement. If you have any warnings related to potential risks. In some cases, those may be mandated depending on the type of product. But for example, I'll give you one that's kind of mandatory. If you look in packages of hot dogs, sometimes you see warnings about feeding pieces of hot dogs to small children, right? Have you guys ever read that? You know, that's not necessarily mandatory. That's just companies wanting to be proactive and saying, and reminding the consumer, hey, you know what? This could be a choking hazard. Most foods are choking hazards, okay? So, but you need to remind the consumer, ding, ding, food, gonna put it in your mouth, choking hazard, okay? Unfortunately, that's any recipes, coupons, whatever that your marketing department want to put on the product, those are voluntary features. They're used also to persuade the consumer of the product's superiority or advertise other products. You know, sometimes there's this product and say, oh, have you tasted the other products in this line? And that's on that label as well. So it's also a marketing and promotion tool. I'm going to run through these a little quickly, but these are some of the special statements or claims that can be found in different meat product and food product packages. Third-party claims, and these are becoming more popular. Is it global GAP or AMS Process Verified or American Heart Association or all these? Now that we're into handling and all these types of things. Claims regarding production practices, things such as no antibiotics or vegetarian fat or things of that sort. You know, breed claims. If you want to call it Angus beef, you know, then you have to say, you know, that's another. Claims like halal and kosher and things like that, gluten-free, health claims, okay, and these are regulated in 21 CFR, even for meat products. Implied nutrition claims, so, and when you make implied nutrition claims are regulated, okay, you cannot just call your product heart healthy just because. The USDA is going to ask you why, you know, support your claim. Why are you making that claim? And down and so forth, you know, natural claims, negative claims, which are free from claims, you know, this product. There's a couple, there's negative claims and then there's positive claims. The negative claims are the products free of this, free of saturated fat, free of the contains, doesn't have this. The other side is what they do contain, okay, so the product has this and has that, okay. Organic claims or containing organic ingredients and things like that. And you can find all of these down in the FSIS compliance guidance for label approval, which is a fairly recent document actually. It's been around for like a year and a half. And keep in mind that some of these claims are also regulated by the FTC because they're in the commercial kind of realm. Okay, so in that kind of realm, I would recommend you go to CAST and pull up this issue paper, which they put out almost 2 years ago about process labeling. And you can see, you know, what constitutes process labeling. Things like this: natural, free-range, GMO, with, you know, hormones and certified organic, and all those other things that are not mandatory labeling elements, but that are becoming more commonplace, and some grocers are beginning to request these types of things. So this is a very good review paper, and they talk about it. And they talk about the pros and the cons of some of these process labeling issues. So let me talk a little bit about some of these. I got some examples of products for you to illustrate for you what some of the newer labels are. These are products what we call like new label type products, and they will fall under what we call clean label. And if you look at some of these guys, you know, now it's, if you look at what they have, you know, look at the labels on some of these. Pork raised without hormones. Okay, no nitrates or nitrites added. No preservatives, 100% natural. Again, down here, 100% natural. And there's certain things that they have to say. You know, uncured ham, all right? So what does that mean? No nitrates or nitrites added. And notice the American Heart Association seal right there. By the way, you pay for that. It's not free, okay? The American Heart Association makes money off of this. And a different type of product out there. These are products that you're likely to see out there. Again, if we're talking like hot dogs, you know, compare, we got all natural uncured beef hot dogs, and again, no nitrates, nitrites added. That's a regulatory requirement. Oscar Mayer Company made an announcement a few months ago that most of their product portfolio is going to go into this clean label kind of, so that's got a really gutsy marketing move. We'll see if it works out for them or not. So they committed to making most of their products clean label. So you will no longer be able to find regular Oscar Mayer wieners. Now they're all uncured Oscar Mayer wieners, for example. Again, I just kind of like this picture. I thought they did a good job of, it's kind of cool, natural casing hot dogs, but again, uncured, no nitrates added. So you guys all seen these types of products in the store? You can find them in every store these days. Okay? No one has? Some of you guys have? Great, awesome. Bacon, near and dear to the pork industry. Again, we have uncured bacon and Oscar Mayer, which is going to go which is going this route for all their products and so forth. So that just gives you kind of a snippet on what these labels actually look like. Okay, so now with that, just having established what are the mandatory requirements, elements of a product label, what's voluntary. We're going to move into I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the consumer and what is that, because at the end of the day, it's the consumer that interfaces with our label. And to me, this is really important because the segment in this case, the swine industry that interacts most with consumers are the processors, who are literally putting the product on the shelf at Hy-Vee, and consumers go in, and then they pick it up and interact. They touch the product, they interact with it, and that label is communicating information to them. It can communicate information to them about the product, but also about the farming practices, how the animals were raised and fed, and what's in the product, what's not in the product. So, this is really important. So we need to understand consumer sentiment. So a lot of this is going to echo what we saw this morning. If you go to the top attributes, a lot of research has been done looking at, what do consumers say they look for? 85% say they look for natural in their label. I believe this is an aided survey, meaning, do you look for natural in their label? Versus me asking you, what do you look for in the label? Let me think. Do you look for the word natural in the label? Oh yeah, I look for the word natural. So I think this is an aided survey. But if you look at consumers, they look for natural, they look for a clean label. Okay. Every time I use the word clean label, it's in quotation marks because there's nothing particularly clean or dirty about it, and there's nothing clean or dirty about conventional product labels either. So it's a misnomer. Things like this, sourced in USA, so forth, and some of these things, it's not negligible. People look at organic and GMO and so forth. Now, if you ask consumers, are you willing to pay for a natural product? Less than 35% will say they will pay. Okay, so while the consumers will say, and we know this about consumer behavior, they say one thing, but when they have to vote with their dollar, they behave differently. So most consumers are not willing to pay for this, but about 35% are. Okay, we're going to focus primarily on these three: natural, clean label, and organic, which seems to be the ones that are most, in this list, the ones that are most important. Trans fat free, that's going to become a non-issue because trans fats are going to become illegal, added trans fats in the food supply. Okay, so again, this is the International Food Information Council does a survey every year, the Food and Health Survey. This is found online. And they've been doing this since the year 2006. This is when they actually started. And every year, the top three things that consumers say, how much of an impact do the following have on your decision to buy foods and beverages? It's always taste, price, healthfulness. So while the consumers are talking about one want a product to be healthy, but I want it to taste good, and I want it to be reasonably priced. So, and these are the types of things that food processors struggle with, because all we hear about is, healthy? Is it healthy? Is it good? Is it sustainable? And all these other things that are circling around these days. But at the end of the day, consumers want the product to be affordable and to be a good eating experience for them. So what's driving some of this consumer sentiment? Not so much on the pricing point, but on what we see today that's driving the changes in food product labels today. Increasing interest in health and wellness is a very legitimate, consumers, we're becoming a more health-aware society, so we want to know what it is that we're putting in our bodies and what we're feeding our children. There's a desire for more transparency. I don't say transparency, I say more transparency, because I think our labels are transparent as they are. Now, the fact that a consumer does not understand what's on the label, then that's the issue. Okay, but the labels, most food product labels in this country are pretty good at telling you what's in the product because the law is designed in that way. But consumers want you to tell them more. Tell me more. So did you use gestation crates for these pigs, or the sows that these pigs came from that you used to make the sausage? Did you fed them hormones? Did you do, what kinds of things did you do? So they want to know more about it. And then there's food activism, which is a lot of what was discussed this morning, which in my opinion, much of it is irresponsible and promotes a lot of fallacious arguments, and exploits people, exploits a fear of the unknown and the consumer's general ignorance when it comes to scientific issues. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about those. There's things that are out there. The appeal to nature, I think it's a thing that we're seeing a lot in, especially when we talk about ingredients, non-meat ingredients added to meat products, where now consumers are asking, well, is it natural? And there's a fallacious argument going around, which is extremely dangerous, I think, for us as a society. So this is not just about food. This just transcends further. This fallacy says that everything that's natural is good, everything that's unnatural is bad. Okay, so everything. So it doesn't care, and like it was said this morning, what determines the properties of any substance is not the source. It's not whether it's natural or synthetic, it's the actual molecule that's in it. This is chemistry. Okay, you can't cheat the chemistry, you can't cheat nature. You can try to play around with changing names and calling things different things, but it doesn't change the nature of what they are. So this is a very dangerous fallacy out there, because we know that there are a lot of things that occur in nature that are actually very hazardous. There are a lot of carcinogens found in nature. There's some natural things that we should not be eating, and appeal to emotion, fear of the unknown. If you can pronounce it, don't eat it. In fact, someone else said, if your third grader can pronounce it, you shouldn't eat it. So now your food choices are dictated by the pronunciation skills of your third grader. So if you want to eat good food, make sure your kid learns to talk early and do a lot of reading. So Johnny, can you pronounce this? Ooh, good. I can eat it now. Okay. The disgust or the yuck factor also factors into this appeal to emotion. Who remembers the food babe and her campaign against Subway? Okay, and to remove azodicarbonamide. Azodicarbonamide is a dough conditioner. It's been used in this country since the 1930s. It is grass, and everyone in this room has eaten it. Okay, and yet we're all here. And you're probably not going to get anything, not even long-term effects as a result of eating it. And yet, these people could associate. Notice always the association when some chemical substance found in a food with a non-food use, and then there's this yuck factor. Ugh, yuck. The latest thing on this food babe is a couple of years ago she went on a rant that because cotton is used to make clothing, which is non-food, and we don't eat clothes, therefore we should not eat cottonseed oil because it's a non-food. Check out her, I'm not advocating that you give her more clicks, but this is the extent of this. So I'll leave it at that. Again, who's heard of cultured meat? Okay, so this thing, a group last fall suggested that we rebranded clean meat. Okay, that would be tragic. So as a meat industry, we need to call things what they are. And cultured meat is not meat. Okay, and it will never be meat. It doesn't come from a live animal. It doesn't meet the definition of meat. And also the use of the word clean also kind of makes a judgment on the product that we make, on the perfectly good meat products that we make. So again, hopefully we won't make the same mistake that we made with clean label when the industry itself coined the term and started using it. Okay, so again, guilt. There's always guilt. You're feeding that to your children? What kind of a mother are you? You're feeding that to your kid? And no one said anything wrong about it except some bloggers saying that it's, because you can't pronounce it, you shouldn't be eating it. Things were better in the good old days also appeals to the emotions, right? Who can forget this idyllic picture of a young family in the 1870s in the plains of Kansas? There you are. And we all grew up, at least I grew up watching this. No, there's not some of you young folks, probably not, but I grew up watching this. I'm sure many of you did. And, it was always nice. There was, things always turned on. It was beautiful. Never mind that the house, probably the average family was a little larger. There was vaccination around by this time, but still, there were some diseases that were going around that were killing people. They don't kill people anymore unless you don't vaccinate your kids. And never mind that the little house on the prairie probably had no running water, no plumbing, no air conditioning, no heating, and no gas, no electricity, so life was peachy, it was nice. And good old days. Other things appeal to intuitiveness and simplicity. If it seems that way, it must be that way. It's intuitive, right? So without having any fundamental deeper knowledge, people making, and bloggers are really taking advantage of these types of things, look, if I see a person lying in the middle of the street out here in Lincoln Way, what am I going to say? Well, got run over by a bus. Are you sure? What if they had a heart attack and just fell dead in the middle of the street? So if I didn't see it happen, I can make judgment calls. But we walk around always, you put a picture on Facebook of some little puppy that looks really sad, like those Humane Society commercials, a little puppy in a cage. I can tell you that's the same face my dog makes when we're eating and he wants the crumbs that fall. He'll look at us and go, oh, my poor abused puppy. We're not feeding well. So I could just take any kind of a visual image, take it completely out of context and convince people that they're seeing something that is really not there. All right. And there's an interesting article which you can also find. There's many of these things that have been published, but these people argue that they're talking about GMO. Lay people are often unable or simply not interested in investing large amounts of time and energy to acquire a profound grasp of complex technologies. And this is the issue that we have. It's very easy to scare people. It's very difficult to appease people. And when we come in with an argument, our arguments are based on science. And sometimes, in order to understand what we're trying to explain to you, you need to have a fundamental level of competence in the field, which most consumers do not have. So it's very difficult for me to explain to you if you don't understand the basis of, say, food chemistry. Okay, if that scares you off the bat, then we can't have rational discourse. And the folks that promote these things, they take advantage of that all the time. So when lay people are confronted with and have to evaluate information about GMOs and the risks involved, they will predominantly rely on their intuitive mind. So they will always go back to their preconceived notions, okay, and their preconceived biases and their pre-existing biases. So therefore they tend to prefer GMO representations that are most in line with their intuitive expectations and are easier to understand and remember. So the Food Babe packages a nice story. Easy to remember, easy to understand, forget everything else. Don't give me the details, it's too complicated. That's kind of what we're up against, okay? And repetition, if I hear often, it must be true. Corporate size, big is bad. We've heard about that, right? So these are, the poster children of, poster child for the biochemical, animal, ag biochemical industry, processed foods, fast foods. These are the companies that they like to pick on. They never pick on Burger King. They never pick, you pick one, and I'm going to go after that. Like somebody said, well, what do they pick only on Monsanto and on all the other companies that make glyphosate? Because you keep it in people's minds. It's Monsanto, Monsanto, Monsanto. It could have been some other company, but it's all a very nicely crafted message. So anyway, so this is, to me, and in my opinion, this is the danger. Now we're gonna shift gears now from the sort of negative aspects of it, and we're gonna talk a little bit about. Well, I guess I have another slide on this. It's been known there are gaps between the public and scientists on key issues, not just around food, but around many other issues, and these gaps are leading to some really unintended consequences. And I don't have the answer for you. Just my opinion that we need to also tackle this in our schools and how our kids are, the type of education our kids are receiving. We need to be very careful about that. I don't really have the answers. The last speaker downstairs did have some good ideas about what we can do to engage people and hopefully try to win them over to, because this is a society, like I said before, this is societally very important to me. I think not just food, but a lot of things, a lot of issues in our culture. All right, so who remembers this guy? I asked the young crowd, who knows who this guy is? And some of you are old enough to remember. So if I'm Alfred E. Newman, who by the way is always running for president and we never elect him, and perhaps we should. These are all the things that are in the minds of a consumer. So put yourself in a consumer who doesn't have a fundamental level of chemistry at all, and chemistry itself is a bad word. You mean chemicals in my food? I don't want chemicals in my food. I want chemical-free food, okay? So never mind that the food is all chemical. And so you put yourself in the shoes. These are all the things that are kind of revolving around people's minds. So they become prime candidates for others to come in and just package a nice story and scare the heck out of them. And then the food industry has a, public relations issue. All right. The next speaker's at 2:00, right? I'm going to try to keep us in line here. Again, so labeling trends in the meat industry. Now I'm going to switch gears a little bit to the meat industry. And what do we do? So now we have established this, the meat industry response. So the meat industry has been responding and trying to work with these consumer perceptions. And I'm not going to get into politically what the food industry should do. I think we give in. There's no reason that a large multinational food company should give in to the misinformation of the food babe. Okay, but taking a stand is also not if you're thinking of it as a business, taking a stand may not be a good thing to do. But every time that the food babe criticizes an ingredient that's in your product and you remove it, they take that as an admission of guilt. See, you knew that you shouldn't have had that ingredient. So when you look at your product's ingredient statement, you need to ask yourself, can I defend the use of every one of these ingredients? And am I willing to? Or is some blogger going to come around and say, oh, you should not have sodium nitrite in your product because it causes cancer, And then you say, okay, you feel that way, I'll change it for something else. And then they say, see, and then you go back and Food Babe and others will say, see, victory, Food Babe Army, we are strong, right? So I used to be in the industry, now I'm not. It's probably easier for me to say those things now, but I think the long-term consequences could be serious. Okay, so again, simplicity. Consumers look for simplicity, natural, organic. We talked a little bit about process labeling. The clean label was adopted in the mid-2000s by the industry. There's no clear definition. It encompasses a number of things, even environmental issues, the carbon footprint, organic. A lot of things are now beginning to be put under this clean label sort of umbrella, whereas before it was just about the label and the ingredients in the product. Okay, at the end of the day, consumers desire what they perceive to be natural. Okay, all right. So as far as natural and clean label approaches in processed meats, it involves replacement of unfamiliar chemical sounding ingredients from natural sources of the same thing, of the exact same chemical molecule. For example, replacing sodium nitrite with celery juice powder, which contains sodium nitrite. Okay, or it contains nitrite. So, but now in the label says celery juice and not sodium nitrite. Replacement of familiar ingredients with more clean label versions. So for example, have you heard of evaporated cane juice? How about turbinado sugar? Have you heard of that? How about just brown sugar? Okay, so some of these things are sugar. They're the same thing. They're usually less refined forms. And so, but it's the same, generally different names for a very similar product. And so I think these are going to be my last few slides. I just want to give you an idea. How many of you are from the processing side of the industry? I don't know this. I work for processing, one person, so this might be familiar to you. But some ingredients, hopefully all of you are consumers of sausage and processed products and bacon and so forth. So you will find some of these ingredients in your product, right? So these are some of the approaches that the industry has taken to address this. Sodium nitrite is the big culprit here. Some people hate nitrite, even though there's no clear evidence that cured meats cause cancer. Despite what you eat, there's just no evidence for that. There's no evidence that red meat causes cancer. Okay, so but it's a very nicely concocted story, and so now we have consumers who are convinced, and to unconvince them is extremely challenging. But anyway, the industry says, well, consumers or some consumer groups don't want sodium nitrite, therefore we can replace it with these ingredients. And so you have seen probably the celery juice or these types of ingredients, and the Swiss chard is one that's not yet, it's commercial, but it hasn't taken on yet. And so that's a natural source of nitrite, which will do exactly the same in the product. It's a lot more expensive, but never mind that. Erythroid and ascorbate, which accelerate the reaction of the sodium nitrite with meat pigment. That's what makes the sodium nitrite, one of the things that's what makes cured meats pink and what gives them their characteristic flavor. So We use erythrorbate ascorbate to make that reaction, cause that reaction to go faster. Now we can replace it with some natural sources like cherry. Cherry has a high concentration of vitamin C, which is ascorbic acid, which is a cure accelerator. So it works the same way. It's just the acid form of sodium ascorbate. Sodium lactate is if you see the ingredient sodium lactate is a preservative. It's an antimicrobial ingredient. It's part of it's probably the most robust food safety intervention that the meat industry has seen. Okay, and now we're moving away from sodium lactate, and that's an area of concern for me in favor of other things that may have antimicrobial activity, like vinegar. Vinegar's been fairly successful, or culture. You take sugar and we ferment that, and that produces certain organic acids and so forth that also have antimicrobial activity. But whereas before we knew exactly what lactate was and acted, and lactate we have been able to model lactate, model microbial growth using sodium lactate. We don't have models for all these, and there's all these versions. So they are effective, but we just don't know, and we don't always know. We knew exactly how effective lactate was. Now we just have to go back and redo some of that work, make sure the product continues to be safe. The sodium phosphates. Sodium phosphates are critical. For those of you in the processing industry, you know that a lot of your processing yields are dictated by sodium phosphates. So we don't have a natural source for sodium phosphate. There's things that companies are doing with other types of ingredients, binders and so forth, to try to replace the functionality of phosphate, but we're still looking for that natural source of sodium phosphate that will contain the phosphate, but we don't have to call it phosphate because the word phosphate is a scary word for many consumers. Okay. And then simple things like sugar. Okay, so sugar, no, sugar is bad, right? So evaporated cane juice, turbinado raw cane sugar, molasses, these are all sugar contributing ingredients, which are generally less refined forms of sugar. So it's another way to get at sugar without calling it sugar. The same with salt, sea salt, right? Sea salt's the rave right now. I grew up on sea salt because I grew up in a coastal city. I grew up in a coastal country. So, sea salt is all we had, and we never thought it was that special. It was cheaper than Morton salt because Morton was imported. So now sea salt's all the rage. It's just salt. Okay. In fact, mine salt is actually fairly pure. This is going to be your sea salt is going to be much less pure than regular salt. And when this comes back, modified starches, which are used as binders in some meat products. The word modified here is the key word. Consumers see modified and they go, you modified it. Therefore, it's not good because it's been modified. It's not natural. So therefore, it is not good. So, you can go to a native form of starch. The problem is that the reason we modify starches is to increase their functionality, to make them more effective. So now we have to revert back to native starches, which means that usually we have to find the right starch for each application. And on top of that, it's going to be more expensive because we probably have to use more of it because it's not as effective as the modified. Carrageenan is a bad ingredient, so people are moving away from it and then replacing it with other things. Okay, so a couple minutes I have left. Want to illustrate to you guys some of the elements. Now I showed you these before, but I want to illustrate the difference. I picked the same company just to draw a good comparison here. A regular ham and what we would call a clean label type ham. Okay, and so what are some of the differences? You can see some claims that are not found in this one. Pork raised without added hormones, of course, but then you have to say federal regulations prohibit adding hormones to pork. Okay, but consumers still need to know we didn't add hormones to the pork. No one does. Okay, no one can legally do that. No nitrates or nitrites added except for that naturally occurring in the celery powder. Or sea salt, some sea salts contain nitrate, so you also have to call out except for that's in the sea salt. Other things, for example, no preservatives, 100% natural. Okay, 100% natural, you define it here, no artificial ingredients, and it's minimally processed. So the concept of minimal processing, what does that mean? We don't yet know exactly what it means, but it just kind of means that it's really not that processed, but it's ham. And it's a deli ham, which is sliced. I don't know, and then you wonder, well, how natural is it to begin with, right? Is ice cream natural? There's natural ice cream out there. How can ice cream be natural? When's the last time we found that in nature? Gluten-free, even though meat contains no gluten, but in this case, being a processed meat product, you could add ingredients that contain gluten, so gluten-free is a big thing because about 30% of American consumers believe that gluten is bad for them, even though it really is bad for less than 1%, those who suffer from gluten intolerance or celiac disease. But for some reason, for some bizarre reason, consumers think that gluten is bad, when in reality just the opposite is true. If people with celiac disease have to avoid gluten, and the avoidance of gluten in the diet has some consequences that you need to manage, just like when you have a food allergy. You need to manage that. If you have to do it, you have to do it. But for most people, going gluten-free is not the best way to go. It's not overall very healthy. Okay, and just to top it off, recyclable carton. See, so you see the whole imagery of the product. And again, I'm not being critical of the company. They do really well, and we work with this company a lot. But just to give you an idea, they're responding to their consumer. And the whole package looks like it's recycled, right? It's brown and all that, okay? So again, in the back, some of the claims these guys are making, pork race, again, they reiterate some of those same types of claims, okay? And watch this one. We match a portion of the electricity it needs to prepare and package this product to, whatever energy certification. So all these things resonate with this consumer. Okay. Similar thing on this other type of product, similar types of claims that you can see versus the regular version of this product. Okay. So the main challenges that I see a clean label ingredient, just to end here, are several things. The efficacy. Okay, usually because you're using less refined versions, the active molecule is not going to be present in the same concentration. So you have to add usually quite a bit more of the ingredient. The flavor, because they are less refined, they're going to carry some objectionable flavor contributors as well. The cost in use is critical. Okay, so the cost in use is because, again, and it relates back to the efficacy, because you have less of the active molecule that you're looking for, because you still, believe me, food scientists are still working for the companies, and we're still doing the chemistry, because we have to, okay? We're still doing the chemistry. And it's like saying that because you go GMO-free, you fire all your geneticists. No, you don't. Genetics still goes on, whether it's GMO-free or not. All right. And then I have an example here just to illustrate to you what you guys can look at that. It requires no explanation. So I think that's the end. But I just leave it at that with some of my implications that I see. But I would just want to keep the program moving. I don't want to further delay that. So I will. Do you guys want to take questions or no? You got to move on.
You got a quick question? Anybody?
What always gets me is we have all this processed meat. It's supposed to be good. We see all the labels, and then they add water to it. And I know you didn't speak to that, but that ham showed that there's a certain amount.
Yeah, well, I will say this: water is an ingredient. We consider that a non-ingredient. It is the cheapest ingredient there is. Okay, there are people out there who would like to push the envelope on the water, but most of the products that contain water. What's that?
Say ain't so.
But for example, you cannot make a ham without adding water. Not this type of ham. You just cannot. So you have to, and you have to call it out. So it has an economic benefit, but it also works with the organoleptic properties and the quality of your product. So I would say, having worked for 4 different companies in the past, most companies do not abuse that. It's just the way that but it's that's why the regulations are there. And there are standards of identity that indirectly limit the amount of water that you can add to a product to be able to call it that. And in ham in particular, there's several categories of ham, right? Ham with natural juices, water added, ham and water product, which are ways to, if you want to add more water, you have to call your product something else.
Thank you.
Yeah, all right, thank you.